In the 100 years that motorcycles have wheeled the earth, there have been some bikes that have been so novel, so impactful, so revolutionary that they left an indelible mark on the industry as a whole. Some bikes were immediate game changers upon their release, while others earned their notoriety over time through decades of continuous production. Regardless of how each bike came to be considered industry benchmarks, the lasting impact of their legacy is indisputable. Just as a caveat, we won't be talking about the Honda CB750 or the Ducati 916. While both could be more than deserving of a place on this list, each bike has been discussed on the channel nearly 1,000 times over by now, so don't at me in the comments saying I forgot them. I didn't forget, it was a deliberate exclusion. Anyway, without further ado, let's talk about 5 bikes that changed riding forever. Let's get into it. For the first motorcycle on the list, we need to travel over 100 years back in time to 1923. We're not talking about Indian or Excelsior, we're talking about the BMW R32. While there were motorcycles that came before it, the original design features of the R32 have practically remained staples in bikes still produced by BMW today. The R32 was the first motorcycle produced under the BMW name. BMW is another case of the military implement manufacturer no longer being able to make military goods following the signing of war-ending treaties and instead choose to manufacture motorcycles. It's a story as old as time. In the case of BMW, the German manufacturer of airplane engines during World War I were then forced to diversify following the Treaty of Versailles. One of BMW's first forays into two-wheeled transportation was the design and manufacturing of a flat twin engine for German bicycle company Victoria. This same engine would be used in a motorcycle known as the Helios that was manufactured by German company Bayerische Flugzeugwerke. Probably mispronounced that. Sorry, German people. Who BMW would soon merge with. After the two companies joined forces, they began developing a whole new motorcycle that would become the R32. And yes, every time I say R32, I do also think of the R32 Skyline, but that's because I'm a kid of the 90s. The R32 used a 494cc boxer twin engine that was putting down a beefy 8.5 horsepower and was able to get the R32 up to a top speed of almost 60 miles per hour. Guys, it was 100 years ago, cut it some slack. This single unit, which included both the engine and transmission gearbox, was one of the first to use a recirculating wet sump oiling system, as most engines at this time had a total loss oiling system where oil was burned or ejected as it lubricated the engine. Also, as a side note, if you guys have never seen some old-timey bikes, they have some absolutely bonkers design features. I remember one time at a museum, I saw a bike that had a headlamp that was literally a small little candle that you lit on fire, and then that was your headlamp. Seriously. Also, it's kind of interesting that the BMW chose to use a boxer engine and they came from manufacturing planes. Kind of makes sense, right? So listen, the R32 engine was oriented with the cylinders extending horizontally from the frame in order to provide adequate cooling, a decision designed to mitigate the cooling issues that they had previously on the Helios models. The R32 also used a shaft final drive, a feature that's long been prevalent on BMW motorcycles. BMW actually didn't make a motorcycle without a shaft drive until the F650 was released in 1994. So when I say that BMWs are just making dinosaur tech with new farkles, that's kind of why I say it. The air-cooled boxer twin in the R32 became one of BMW's many signature elements and has lived in countless motorcycles over the years, many of which have been legendary in their own right, like the R65 and the R90 touring bikes, and the arguable inventor of adventure riding, the R80 GS. You can still find air and oil-cooled boxer engines in current BMW models like the R9T and the R18. Also, I think the new R9T is like an R912T or R129T. It's got such a dumb name. I can't remember right now, but yeah. BMW things, what are you gonna do? The Triumph Bonneville is a motorcycle that stood the test of time. A few production breaks notwithstanding, it's been produced in some capacity since 1959. Despite multiple ownership changes and financial hardships, Triumph has always managed to find a place for the Bonneville in its lineup. At one point, the Bonneville was a modern motorcycle, and now it is a benchmark for all modern classics, in my opinion. In 1965, Motorcycle Hall of Famer Johnny Allen would set a world speed record of 214 miles per hour at the Bonneville Salt Flats riding on a Triumph-powered Streamliner. Guys, that is bonkers. I've gone 211 miles per hour on an H2. I have to bring that up seemingly once a month so you guys know that I'm a real deal motorcyclist. But 214 on an old-timey Bonneville on Salt Flats? I don't have the testicular fortitude. To honor this feat, Triumph would name the T120 the Bonneville. The Bonneville was based on the T110 Tiger. The 649cc parallel twin engine was outfitted with the Tiger's carbs and high-performance camshaft. Designed to be the best motorcycle in the world, per Triumph's own description, the T120 was aimed at the lucrative US market, where the vast landscapes and long, high-speed roadways demanded extra power at the rider's disposal. In 1967 alone, Triumph sold 28,000 Bonnevilles in the US. In the 1960s, the Bonnie saw many race successes and cultural feats. It won the Thruxton 500-mile endurance race in 1962, and in 1969, with the initial victory leading to the production of a T120R Thruxton model for the 64 and 65 production years. The Thruxton name came back around 40 years later and ultimately represents Triumph's flagship performance cafe racer that they sold from 2004 until its recent discontinuation. The Thruxton's one of my very favorite motorcycles that Triumph has built. I got the chance to ride one a few years back. Really loved it. The feeling was great, the torque was great, it was super sporty, but also beautiful, really cool bike. The Bonneville was also ridden to victory in the production class at the Isle of Man TT races in 67 and 69. Even famed motorcycle stuntman Evel Knievel jumped the Caesars Palace atop a Bonneville T120. Yeah, it's like a cultural icon. Still in production today as Triumph's flagship modern classic, the Bonneville serves as the foundation for various bikes, including the Scrambler, Speed Twin, and even a Bobber. The Bonneville is not just one of Triumph's most recognizable motorcycles, but one of the most recognizable bikes in general, and many bikes have tried to copy it. Once known for their performance chops, the Bonnie is now enjoyed for its charm, its character, and its British legacy. Since we're on the topic of legendary, iconic bikes, another bike that has had a massive global impact is the Harley-Davidson Sportster. Yes, I know Yam is talking about the Sportster. The boomers have made it loud and clear that I've got no right to defame their precious motor company, but hey, I've only got nice stuff to say today, and to be honest, I think the Sportster's kind of neat. I really like it, and I think it's really cool for what it is. The Sportster is a monumental piece of motorcycle history, even if it is a heavy, slow, hard-to-ride, overrated girl's bike. Come on, it's just a joke. Let's lighten up, huh? The Harley-Davidson Sportster was first released in 1957. Built using many characteristics from their previous K-series, Harley-Davidson released the Sportster as a lightweight, nimble alternative to their massive V-twin cruisers, aimed at competing with the lightweight British roadsters from Triumph, Norton, and BSA. The first Sportster was released using the overhead valve iron head engine, replacing the side valve flathead engine found in the K-series that came before it. This new engine was a bit bigger and more powerful, and the Sportster used many elements from the previous K-bikes, including the frame, fenders, hydraulic front forks, first for HD. When the Sportster came on the scene, it was immediately attractive to American buyers. It had the sleek, slim profile of the British roadsters that were popular at the time, while offering more power and having the Made in America home team appeal. More power from a Sportster. Yeah, I know, different times. By the 1960s, the Sportster had become a staple of American motorcycling, and it was kind of the platform for custom motorcycle builds like choppers or bobbers, but the Sportster was kind of slow to evolve. It was outfitted with the Evo V-twin engine, sold in the 883 and 1200 configurations after 1988. Yes, that long ago, they didn't really change it for a very long time. The noteworthy changes were the addition of a 5th-speed transmission in 91, rubber-mounted engines in 2004, and fuel injection in 2007. You can say the pace of progress was glacial at best. Despite minimal mechanical innovations, the Sportster has been sold in countless varying aesthetic designs and trim packages over the last 60 years. Despite its relatively uninspiring performance, the Sportster is a fixture of motorcycling Americana. It has been sold in astonishing quantities, featured in dozens of movies and TV shows, and has been the inspiration for numerous cruisers for other manufacturers over the years. The Sportster also played a very interesting trick in that it kind of failed upwards into the modern classic lineup of bikes today. Because it ran basically unchanged from 1988, it has such an old school character and charm and flavor about it, such that you can pick up a 2017 Sportster and it kind of feels like a 1980s bike. It's actually really cool, assuming you do several modifications to it when you get it, otherwise it's kind of a dense, unrideable piece of garbage. Just being honest, okay? Look, I know it's banana yellow to you, but Suzuki calls this color on the GSX 8R Pearl Ignite Yellow. It's actually very pretty in person, and you will get loads of looks while you're riding it, because guess what? I am giving this bike away to a lucky member in the audience. I've given away over 51 41 motorcycles valued at over $500,000 in the last 5 years. It's been the coolest part about running this channel, and we just keep doing cool bikes all the time. Head over to yamanoob.co and pick out a t-shirt, a hat, a hoodie, whatever you'd like, and every dollar you spend on the store will be an entry to win the bike, and who knows, we might even have a sweet multiplier going on right now. So head over to the store, check it out, and don't miss it. We all love naked bikes. They've become the gold standard for fun, sporty, usable motorcycles for the average street rider. They're kind of my category of choice, and if you were to put a gun to my head, I would probably pick a naked bike to ride all the time. They've become so ubiquitous, it's hard to imagine a time in which no such thing really existed. In the early 90s, there were race replica sport bikes and big loping cruisers. It wasn't until Ducati, of all companies, in a bit of a last-ditch effort, released the Monster onto the scene that set the precedent for a fun, agile, torquey, and comfortable motorcycle. And it became the new gold standard. You might think of Ducati's race-winning superbikes as the brand's crown jewels, but it was the commercial success of the Monster that allowed Ducati the financial leeway necessary to continue to evolve their sport bikes and racing efforts. It's kind of like the Porsche Cayenne and the Macan. They kind of saved Porsche. I know, I don't want to admit it either. The Monster is what you would consider a parts bin special. It had the air-cooled L-twin engine from a 900 Supersport, the frame from an 888 Superbike, and the front fork from a 750 Supersport. This is Frankenstein's Monster. See what I did there? It was thought to be hard on the eyes by Ducati standards, but it was very much a motorcycle that was greater than the sum of its parts, and I think it's aged really well. It offered a package that had previously been foreign to Ducati. It was relatively affordable, it was approachable in power, and it had the potential for customizability, something that American riders had become accustomed to in the wake of Harley-Davidson. The Monster was aimed at a young, average motorcyclist. It was not a racer or collector of bespoke limited edition Italian superbikes. The Monster was cheap to produce and sold in numbers that no Ducati had ever seen before, and at one point accounting for over 2/3 of Ducati's output. Again, literally saved the company. Since its inception, over 350,000 Ducati Monsters have been sold globally in varying configurations. There's air-cooled engines, liquid-cooled engines, big engines, and small engines, and can all be found on a Monster over the last 30 years. The bike was so impactful it actually led Suzuki to develop an SV650, a bike that has earned legend status in its own right, and you've probably heard it if you've been sleuthing forums online trying to find a perfect grow-into-it beginner bike. While still in production itself, the influence of the Ducati Monster can still be seen in new motorcycles today as comfortable ergonomics, minimal bodywork, and playful parallel twin engines continue to be all the rage. But if you ask me, those iconic old-school air-cooled 2-valve Ducati Desmo engines with the trellis frame, that was a good bike. It was hard to determine which sport bike to include on the list today. There have been great motorcycles from every manufacturer, there's no doubt about that. And there have been bikes that completely changed the game for all of their sport bikes that came afterwards, like the original GPZ 900 Ninja or the Suzuki GSX-R 750. But honestly, it's hard to think of any other motorcycle that changed the trajectory of the modern day sport bike more than the Honda CBR 900 RR Fireblade. I know I talked about this bike a few weeks ago in the 90s versus today's sport bike shootout, but it seems way too pertinent to leave it off, as I already felt compelled to omit some other greats that have been lauded to death. The more I look at this bike and the more I think about it, the more I realize this is where the modern superbike was born. The original Fireblade, first released in 1992, was a harbinger of change for the sport bike industry. When it came onto the scene, the CBR 900 RR had a revolutionary power-to-weight ratio. Instead of gunning for outright maximum power, though it still made a healthy 121 ponies, the Fireblade was meant to excel in its handling and agility. Built using a bored-out 750cc 4-cylinder engine, the CBR 900 RR weighed just 4 pounds more than the CBR 600R that came before it. So we know the Fireblade was a serious performance contender, but you can't also not mention its iconic 90s livery. If there was ever a motorcycle to come to mind when you think of 90s motorcycle excellence, it's the 90s Fireblade with the Urban Tiger paint scheme. I am also just now learning it was called that, and knowing it was called Urban Tiger makes me like it even more. Look at this thing. Oh, it's just perfect. The Fireblade set a precedent for handling and performance in the early 90s that not only made the way for Honda's own legacy of sport bikes, of which a Fireblade still reigns supreme today, but sport bikes from all manufacturers. Young riders may find it hard to believe, but there was a time in which Honda made truly innovative and exciting bikes, some that even inspired certain bikes from Ducati, if you can believe it. And the Fireblade is up there in the ranks of not just one of Honda's most legendary bikes, but one of the most legendary sport bikes of all time. Thanks so much for watching. watching. I always enjoy these sort of deep dive historical videos, and I hope you liked it as well. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you're new here. If you want to learn more about you can win our Suzuki GSX-8R giveaway, head over to yamanoob.co and you can become a member for exclusive content and automatic giveaway entries, or to just earn entries by purchasing some Yamanoob merch. Thanks again for the support, everyone. I will see you guys later. Fact: Merriam-Webster named authentic the word of the year for 2023, which saw a notable uptick in lookups compared to previous years. Goodbye. Alas, our time is up here on this video, but the party doesn't have to end. Join as a member over on yamanoob.co. That is my website, linked down below. You'll get entered to win this fantastic motorcycle. It's ending in the month of July. You're not going to want to miss it, but in the meantime, click this video right over here and keep watching yourself some sweet, sweet Yamanoob content.